So that is going to be it for our predictions. And now we're going to take a look back at 2010 and talk about the disappointments and surprising teams from that year. So why don't you give us one of your surprises of 2010?
Okay, well, I put my top 3 surprises as the Cincinnati Reds because they made the playoffs after finishing below 500 in 2009. I think they're a very deep team. They've got a good bench, or they did last year. I don't know how that's going to change next year. They had a good bench, great offense. Joey Votto won the MVP. And their pitching was very deep too. I mean, they had lots of rookies coming in. We're talking about people like Mike Leake, Travis Wood, and then you also had some established guys like Bronson Arroyo, who was solid last year, and Edinson Volquez, and they've got a lot of starting pitching depth and a lot of bullpen depth. They just lost Arthur Rhodes, but I think their bullpen is still pretty good. I think that, but they're still a surprise because no one really considered them to be a contender going into the season. Everyone was thinking it was going to be Cardinals, especially with the locking up of Matt Holliday. I also put the Padres in there because they won 90 games, which is surprising considering how bad their offense was. Really, their only offensive superstar was Adrian Gonzalez. They got a lot of good hits, a lot of clutch hits. I think the team batted pretty high with runners in scoring position, kind of higher than usual. So I don't think they're going to do as well next year, especially with the loss of Adrian Gonzalez. But they're still a super surprise this year. And then number 3, the Rangers, who won the pennant. Obviously, I think they're a surprise only because they showed that they could play well in 2009. They finished above 500, and it wasn't out of the blue like teams like the Padres and the Reds were. But the Rangers, for making it that far and doing that well, I put them as number 3.
Yeah, I had the Rangers as well. I mean, they won 90 games that they wouldn't have won any division other than the West in the American League with that record. But what they managed to do in the playoffs, I think, was the biggest surprise.
Amazing.
A lot of people predicted them to win the division, so I don't think it was so surprising their regular season. But I guess Cliff Lee helped a lot get them to the World Series. So
yeah, especially that ALCS against the Yankees. I mean, they outran the Yankees, they outpitched the Yankees, they outhit the Yankees. Okay.
And I had the Cincinnati Reds as well, which Anton touched on. And my 3rd team was the Tampa Bay Rays, who the 96 wins was a little surprising. Didn't expect their pitching to pull together the way it did. Saw them as a team to contend with probably later down the road. Thought Boston was more the team the Yankees would be dealing with, but the Rays really pulled it together, but pretty much got squished by the Rangers, who had a masterful postseason. Yeah. So those are our surprises. Now we're going to go to the disappointments of 2010.
Fergus, would you like to lead it off?
Yeah, why not? So my number 1 disappointment was the Seattle Mariners. And we didn't expect them to win the division. I didn't, at least. Some people thought they would. But people definitely thought they would contend with their starting rotation, Felix Hernandez and then Cliff Lee. That rotation already is something that you'd think would win you a lot of games. And people thought their offense wouldn't be, that great. But it was horrible. It was so much worse than we could have imagined.
It was brutal, their offense.
We thought Felix Hernandez would, help propel their team, but he had the worst offensive support in the league, Felix Hernandez did.
Yeah.
So how did that work out for them? 61 wins, bottom of the division, huge disappointment.
Huge.
And they have not really been anything but disappointing since their 116-win 2001 season.
29 games back as well. The weird thing about the Mariners was that I also had them as my most disappointing team because they won 88 games in 2009, I believe. I'm not exact, but it was in that range. You look and you say, okay, we've got an 88 game winner right here, and then you add a Cliff Lee there. It just looked like a match,
Yeah. My my other disappointment from 2010 was the Detroit Tigers, who ended up at a 500 year. Their pitching just wasn't up to standard. They were in contention with the Twins last year, or with 2009, and they played that one-game playoff, and it seemed like since that loss, they've gone nowhere since their collapse at the end of that year.
Yeah.
They've just really been a deflated team, and I mean, Jim Leyland's one of the best managers in baseball, and I'm sorry that he has to have an uninspired team, it seems, at this point, but they're making some moves this offseason. They're looking to get right back in there.
They got Joaquin Benoit, who was a very good setup man with the Rays last year, and they also got Victor Martinez. We tend to not realize about Victor Martinez moving to the Tigers because the Red Sox offense is just so good anyway that I don't know if it's even going to make that big a difference. But yeah, I had the Tigers there as well, just because on paper they're a pretty solid contender in, not an extremely strong division. I think they're good. I think that's a good division there, but it's nowhere near the AL East.
Yeah.
With Miguel Cabrera, you'd think he may be able to lead the team, and they had some rookies too, Austin Jackson, and Brendan Bosch.
I mean, and don't discredit Miguel Cabrera, and I'm sure you're not, but because Miguel Cabrera had an MVP quality season.
Oh, of course.
Yeah. So, but he couldn't take that role because the team didn't follow.
Yeah. So we both had the Cardinals among our list of disappointments for 2010 because when you looked at the Cardinals. They had three great starting pitchers. You had, Chris Carpenter, Adam Wainwright, who are both perennial Cy Young Award winners. And you also had the rookie 17-game winner, ERA under 3, Jaime Garcia. Those three guys are basically aces. Their other guys weren't so bad either. They had Jake Westbrook, who they traded down the stretch, actually had an ERA around 3 in his time with the Cardinals. So the pitch, and they ranked top 10 in pitching in 2010, but for some reason they weren't able to pull it together.
Who's to say why? But it really wouldn't have taken much to win that division last year. Yeah. 91 wins was the first place team, the Reds. But I see that division getting a lot better next year with the Brewers are rebuilding up. The Cardinals will probably be back to their old form.
The Cubs got Pena.
And the Cubs are looking good. And obviously the Reds had
even the Pirates, not really.
Okay, so I'm gonna just.
But I just think that even though you get your two MVP possible candidates, Matt Holliday and Albert Pujols, and then sometimes you just look at a team and they've got. 5 superstars, and you think, okay, you fill the rest with solid players, which the Cardinals have, and you've got a great team. Well, that's part of the whole idea. The problem with looking at a team on paper, it doesn't always work in that way, and I think the Reds just had everything work together. Everyone kind of played as a team more than the Cardinals did. Cardinals weren't always able to pull it off at times.
And isn't it funny that the two MVP candidates that didn't win and are the bigger names were on our disappointment list, the Tigers and the Cardinals, and the two that did win were on our surprise list, Joey Votto, Josh Hamilton of the Rangers and Reds. So that sheds some light on how the writers vote.
Yeah, the MVP always has to do with the guy that not only was the best player of the year, but also led his team to good measures. Anyway,
so I'm gonna just touch on my last disappointment, which I put the Boston Red Sox. Now the Red Sox didn't have a bad year as far as their record. They won 89 games. Obviously, in the American League East, you're not gonna be in the playoffs with 89 wins. But they were expected for more. They had built their team on solid pitching, acquiring John Lackey, John Lester, who was actually great this year. They also had Josh Beckett in that rotation.
And Clay Buchholz, who really emerged as an ace.
Absolutely.
Red Sox next year, I thought John Lackey was a disappointment. Beckett was garbage. but Lester and Buchholz were really good. I think if Beckett and Lackey can get their act together, you're going to look at a really good team over in Boston. Like, extremely good. On paper, at least. Although they're going to have to, I think they're going to have to move Daniel Bard as the closer because
Pavloman
is trash.
But if their pitchers pull it together, then they won't be good only on paper. They'll be good in reality. And this year they decided building the Red Sox around pitching isn't really the way to go, and they went for the offense, and they got the offense.
And they got both. Woo! So on paper, best team. Philly's also the best team. I think they're both the best teams.
Yeah, they're.
But that's why the game. That's why the season is there. The games are there to be played, and paper doesn't always mean everything.
And when we make our picks for the 2011 season later on in the year, you might be surprised.